Good evening, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. We're thankful that you all have joined us again for this, our 27th episode of Insight. We started on July the 15th, and thankful to God that we're still going on. Insight is a program that is designed as when we bring people on as our guests in various capacities of ministry, life, and professions, and that they would give us insightful information. And not only insightful information, things that can be shared and that you could share with someone else as it relates to this. So I want to say that. Now, before I bring on my guest or introduce my guest, I want to, first of all, thank Reverend Derek Jackson. I want to thank Sister Linda Atkinson Kendall. I want to thank Deaconess Asia Camp Jackson. I want to thank Niger Camp for being the producers of this particular program, letting you all know that we will be going on until the end of June, June the 30th, and then July and August, we will take a break. We will try to get our additional creative juices going on. So when we return back in September, we will do the same thing. My guest tonight is a friend, a sister, someone that I admired over the course of the years, a person who has been, he even given me some advice on some various things, and I want to thank her. And that is Minister Lynnessa Joyner, who is with us and who not only is with us, she's an administrative specialist to the vice president and principal in Syracuse, principal gifts and strategic initiatives at Syracuse University. So we know that we have a sister here that will give us some information that she would share with us. And so, Minister Joyner, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm quite honored.
Listen, I want to say to the people again that Minister Joyner was very influential whenever Bethlehem Nation had their Women's Day, or she was called on to be certainly a teacher, a worship leader, and she has been a blessing to us. So I'm thankful to God for her on this evening. I got a bunch of things to ask you today, and listen, Minister Joyner, you can delve right on in, and you can elaborate on all of the things that we'll be talking about tonight. And so, again, I'm so thankful. Now, also, I should say, she is a mother of wonderful children and a grandmother. She's proud of that grandmother piece. She's proud of all of her children, but that grandmother piece, the fact that all grandparents know this, when you're a parent, it's kind of harder on the children, depending on the situation. But when you're a grandparent, there's nothing that they can do that's wrong.
No,
They can drop 10 plates.
it's true.
And
Hold up.
they can drop 10 plates, and then the parent of the child, it's your daughter, I believe. It's your daughter, isn't that
My
right?
daughter and my son
Your
now.
daughter and your
Daughter
son.
and son both.
They can look at it, and then they'll kind of look, maybe try to chastise, and probably Minister Joyner will be the one that say, "I'll leave them kids alone," like my grandmother used to say to my mother. So that kind of thing. Now, I want to ask you, Minister Joyner, that would, first of all, again, thank you again. And what is the state of education on the college level, particularly the one that you work at in Syracuse?
Well, I can tell you this for sure. While because the students are not on campus right now, we don't get a chance to do it the way we were doing it before, which is a lot of interaction physically, being in the same place, the organic process of relationship building. So, what I can tell you now is that people are still applying, students are still applying to schools, that is actually increasing. We've had to learn distance learning in a way that makes us still connected, but also keeps the academic rigor
Yeah,
so that the school's ratings don't go down.
yeah,
Because the ratings, this Syracuse University is a private university.
yes,
So we need to keep a standard so that number one, our ratings don't go down, but also that parents and students will still want to come and be a part of the community, particularly in a time like this, where if they can't go to school from faraway places, they may fall back to their local schools because at least there they may be able to have that some interaction, something like a hybrid situation versus the large international community we have. We have students, thousands of them from other countries that can't still fly here. So we're preparing to open up for our spring. They begin on Monday. Actually, we delayed it again. So on Monday, I believe it's the 8th, the date wise, the students that are coming back under very strict protocols, residential. So we're gearing up for that, very excited about that, but it also is a different way of learning. And everybody's adjusting. Everybody's just trying to adjust. Technology rather has had to increase, obviously, which means skills technically have to increase. So all of us are being, brought up, if you will, whether we like it or not. Here in at Syracuse, you whether you are on a computer or you were a counselor that did more hands-on work, all of those things have had to change. I worked in career services when I first got to the university, and there was a lot of hands-on, I had a large staff, a lot of hands-on student-oriented programs. How do you keep that going when we can't be around each other? So those challenges are being met head on. We had some time last semester to work through some of the kinks, but I don't think anyone expected it to last this long. So we've also now had to adjust to the length, the weariness that's coming from the length of time that this is going on and the uncertainty. Students, though, I know and I can tell you, are resilient. Young people are resilient and they are good at making adjustments. They may moan and complain about it, but they're going to make the adjustment because they believe that the academic rigor that the school offers is worth the sacrifice. And I find that very encouraging, even as a middle-aged woman. I'm encouraged by watching the tenacity of these students and just their will, just their grit and their will to get through to a 4-year or 6-year or even the doctoral level degree at the amount of money that they're spending.
Yeah. Now, brothers and sisters, she's not middle-aged. She's younger than I am. So she just kind of threw that in there. She's younger than I am. She is not middle-aged. She's a young woman. And by the way, grew up in Brooklyn. So Bed-Stuy.
Bed-Stuy and then Bensonhurst, the two B's.
Yeah.
And Bed-Stuy and then Bensonhurst. When Brother Sharpton was just making a name for himself.
Yeah. That's right.
When I grew up, when we had the high school Dewey murder of the kid, and Al Sharpton descended upon Bensonhurst, kind of spearheaded his political and community activism. I grew up in that era.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, by the way, how's the snow out there? I just got to ask that.
Well, this afternoon we were at about 29 inches. So that's what, 2.5 feet?
Yeah.
I have icicles on my deck. When we finish, I'll send you a picture. They are taller than my 6-foot son.
God.
I've never seen icicles like this. It's just unbelievable. We expected 12-ish, but yesterday we ended up with another about 16, and that was not on the radar. So everybody, I mean, we're grounded. There's not much happening.
Okay. Now, just give us your responsibilities or your breakdown
of my responsibilities at work.
You do at Syracuse University.
Okay, I'm going to explain it to you in layman's terms, easiest as I can for the audience. I work for the VP of Principal Gifts and Strategic Initiatives in the Advancement Office. For layman's term, it's basically the major fundraising arm of the university. And at that level, Principal Gifts begins at a $2.5 million level. In other words, our donors have to have $2.5 million worth of disposable cash to even be a part of what's considered principal gifts. With principal gifts, obviously, if it's fundraising, it is to ask for money to supply us with all the things that the state or the tuition does not cover, which is the bulk of the budget. Because we are private, we rely heavy. It is a really huge department. So I work for the person that is responsible for strategically dealing and managing our top donors all around the world. And in that role, I was recruited in the role because they didn't have a me there. And the work became so strenuous, they needed someone to organize, initialize, set up protocols, keep us in an operational manner, come up with things that would help us function, help my VP do what she needs to do so that she's not stuck in the weeds, and the strategies behind that. Every donor has a strategy. Now, you know, I've grown up in church my whole life. So the advantage of that is I'm able to interchange a lot of what I've learned in church into my positions and vice versa. The only issue is it's easier for me to integrate my experience in church into my position, but it's almost impossible to take my skills in my secular world and put it in church.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, I must say. That is unfortunate because we still want to, we're still at a selfish and, French fries on Friday when there's so many ways that people are looking to engage in something that makes them feel like they are contributing to society.
Yeah.
So if I could do anything, it would definitely be to encourage pastors, leaders to think outside of our normal traditional ways. And I believe that COVID is making that possible. Just because we're not ripping and running at 3:30 services all the time. So now we've got more time to think about. And so in the position that I'm in, I set up strategies. We set up, a lot of technology, a lot of conversation. We call them touch pieces. We have databases that we keep all of the information in. And I want you to know that fundraising at this level is so important because it's the reason that I'm home working and not worried about my job, because salaries are being paid with this money.
Yeah.
This is not faculty. That money is already earmarked. This is not student financial aid. That money is already earmarked. But how do we pay for the bulk of our staff, which is great? I mean, Syracuse University is somewhere around 26 to 27,000 strong.
Wow.
It's a whole city all its own. How are we paying our police officers? We have our own police department. How are we functioning? So the strategic initiatives are initiatives that are set up in campaigns at the $1 billion level. And in order to get that money, you got to have a whole army of people making it happen. So my boss was one of the major fundraisers. She was able, for example, to get last year $75 million check written by one person.
Wow.
Mr. Michael Newhouse, the communication school that we have, that Dick Clark started. Dick Clark started, the late Dick Clark started it. He was an alum of Syracuse University. Mr. Newhouse wrote a check for $75 million. I work for that lady.
Wow.
And it's a lot of pieces, a lot of meetings, a lot of higher level education, and a lot of interaction with each other. Everything is an interaction.
Now, let me ask you this, Minister Joyner. You said something earlier that really, caught my ear. You said that you can't bring what you know in business, not necessarily to the church.
Right.
With people who experience that same thing with you, do they become frustrated because they can't bring it to the church?
Yes.
Do they become condescending to the church, thinking that people in church don't know business? So when you open that door, that was interesting to me. How, in those two respects, how do you see that? And I might be wrong.
Very, very difficult balance. For me, it's not the only thing I can do in church.
Right.
So I'm not quite as frustrated as those who may be business majors, who may have MBAs, who may be working to strategically work in a fund or some sort of large financial organization or investment. It is extremely frustrating to those who not only are learned, but experience in setting up strategies to facilitate outside of God's house for whatever company or school or academic, department they work for, but then cannot use or is not able to use that same skill set to help with the local daycare that is needed and all of the needs a lot of times that the church has, the inability to raise the awareness of what the community needs in order to win souls. Even that, even connecting it to winning souls, the lack of funds, the inability to, keep people with feet on the ground. Your boots can't be on the ground if you can't keep the doors open. Those kinds of, and knowing how to connect those dots. So yes, many people can become frustrated. They can become condescending. But what I have noted in my experience is many of them just leave.
Yeah. Now, my guest tonight, my guest tonight is Minister Lynnessa Joyner. There is a Cash App that will flash across the screen. Please be a blessing to her. $ Lynnessa H. Joyner. And again, she's administrative specialist to the VP Principal Gifts and Strategic Initiatives. And so and she's also a mentor. She loves my daughters, but she's a mentor to Naja, to my youngest daughter, Naja. So I thank her so much for that. Now, I want to go back to that for a second. My question might have been a little off the beaten road. When I said frustrated, I mean, can they be frustrated with people who they think that they are more superior than?
Well, of course, if you have no humility, I mean, you're not operating in a humble manner and you're not operating with, I have a gift or I've been gifted in this area and I'd like to assist, then yeah, you're going to have that condescending spirit. And that, therefore, your gift for me is almost forfeited because anything you do with an arrogance or haughtiness, or you think that your title puts you in that place of superiority is not even accepted by God. So
Right.
Those are not the folks that I'm talking about, because those are the ones that I would say you need a bit more mentoring. That the culture, is not set up that way.
Yeah, but they may not think they may not think, Minister Joyner, they need mentoring.
Well, those are the ones that I pray about. Then I put them on the sofa and I do a lot less conversating with them because, at the end of the day, if they're not going to understand that the church really is a culture and it takes a little bit, it takes wisdom to function in a way where people have been doing things a particular way for a long time. Sometimes you just have to ask God for another way. You have to ask God to show you how to operate in a manner where it can be received. And if it can't be, and if it just cannot be, you ask God to send you someplace where it can.
Yeah.
And I have seen God do that on more than one occasion. What you don't want to do is make yourself seem like you have something that they need. And if they don't use it from you,
Yeah.
they're not, that is not God's way.
Yeah.
Now, I can't be responsible, and nor can anyone else be responsible for it coming to you the other way, because it can come the other way where people do oppress you and they do keep you down because they're intimidated by your knowledge or intimidated by your giftings. We know that happens all the time. But again, the same thing applies. Pray, ask God, is this the place that I still need to be? Maybe I've aged out. Maybe I've become educated out of that ministry and I need to be somewhere where I can use my gift or even create it. These days we can create things that we couldn't do before. So
Yeah.
there's so many ways to get around it. I mentioned it because it's just so much that I've learned and gleaned, even with my small time up here. I know that there's just more than one way to skin a cat. And sometimes we need to use that more than one way, at least open our mind up to hear that there may be another way. Just hear the presentation.
And I also, and you can correct me on this, I think a lot of that can be developed if you have relationship. Because if you don't have relationship with people, meaning not just hi, good afternoon, good evening, but relationships where you can learn something from the people who you think you're superior over.
Absolutely.
Because they can certainly, learn from you. And that's what I meant. And I apologize.
No. I understand. I get it. It takes a lot to see. I mean, the world is even with the students, just understanding that we're not going back to what it was. No matter what we want, we're not going to be able to. Life just not. This has not allowed us, afforded us the opportunity to keep doing it the same way, just because we can't do it the same way.
Right.
And so that has opened up, at least in my experience, a lot more conversation, relationship building, bonding with pastors and leaders in a way that we weren't bonding before because we were churching so much. A lot of times we were doing church, but now it's requiring us to stop, think about it. What is the strategy on what we want to do? What's the goal? What are you trying to get done? At my level, working for my boss, these folks are really smart. They spend time. We have a whole unit called cultivation. And all they do is cultivate relationships with donors and the university.
Yeah.
So I see that we can do that, cultivating with our community leaders, cultivating with our local schools, making sure that they know that it's kind of back to the way we used to do church in some ways, where we went out and met the people and we didn't expect the people to just come in.
Yeah. Yeah.
We created opportunities that would engage us. We have a department called engagement. All they do is engage in the process of making people connected to donors and donors connected. Then we have people who, it's called donor relations. They manage those connections.
Yeah.
I love the whole process because all of it is strategy that we document and that we make sure we all know what's happening. Even that is different. Now, back in the day, it was a few people carrying the church in the briefcase, and they were the only ones who knew how to manage anything because it was all with them. But we kind of expand with the students. They've had to expand, a lot more collaboration. And that's the only way we're going to build trust, Pastor. That's the only way we're going to build trust.
Now, brothers and sisters, for those of you who might be sending a text, I can't see. So when you say, good evening, Pastor, good evening to Minister Joyner, I can't see you. So I just want you to let you know I'm not ignoring you. I just can't see you. I just want to let that be known. Now, you've already explained strategic initiatives, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from what you're able to observe, you said the students are adjusting.
Yes.
Are they adjusting basically with their work? Are they adjusting as it relates to how they're giving assignments or papers and things of that nature?
Well,
How
again,
is that?
everything's technology now with the distance learning. So they've had to develop programs to make it more user friendly and much less clunky, if you will, for lack of a better term. So that information, me myself as a student, a lot of times papers are due by a certain time, because we have all of us on at one time. We initially IT had to expand the broadband because it was just too many of us on at once. We found that there was a lot of kinks there. Now all of that has been adjusted, so it's a lot easier. Students are adjusting. Many of them are so bright and intelligent and technology oriented that they are, sending in. There's a lot more suggestions, a lot more conversations going back and forth. If you don't know, well, do you know if this person knows? Well, I do know this, and a lot more of collaboration. Students are finding their way. They're finding their way because they are young people. And if anybody's going to make the adjustment, they're going to make the adjustment. The
Yeah,
key
they
is
will.
to keep
They
them
will.
in the boundaries and with the direction that they need. There's a lot more anxiety happening on the flip side, a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
more because they're so isolated and not, nobody expected this to be the case. No one could have seen it coming. So it's a lot more of that. Now, for those of us that are believers, we know how to pray. And then if that doesn't work, we know how to call a counselor. We have our psychology department and our wellness departments have grown exponentially. I mean, they've set it up where there's massages and there's spas and there's pools and all kinds of ways to adjust to give the student the ability to come down.
Wow.
Even myself, when I finish with a 8 o'clock morning to an 8 o'clock class, total brain, your brain is just exhausted. So they're doing things to kind of get us out of the chair, get us walking. All of that wellness is also a part of it, and that's helping a lot.
That's great. Now you're a student as well as working there. So
Yes.
what are you studying, Minister Joyner?
My major is religion, and I am right now at the bottom of my third year in religion. It's a nice, long, slow process. But my classes such as early religion and biblical studies and the typical, it's all academic. It's nothing spiritual. So
Right, right.
I'm grateful that I already have that. I come there with that. So I'm able to add that in. I mean, the preaching ability is very helpful when it comes to that because I'm just gonna be me and Jesus is gonna be who he is. So they are aware though. They are aware. I did not initially, as I've always done, I've always kept my work separate from ministry. Just because for the most part I worked with different people. They didn't look like us. So I didn't have the opportunity. However, that has not been my story here. All the way to my boss, they are aware that I am a minister. Every now and then, my boss will say on a line with our, higher level academia, well, we have our minister on the line. Let's just take a breath. That's a new dynamic for me because I didn't propel it. It got out. And that's been interesting. Definitely new. Definitely new. I'm not sure if I like it because it feels it's a certain level of expectation that might be different than a regular employee. But I know that if God has allowed it, I'm adjusting. I'm adjusting. We've had some issues here with the Black Lives Matter. Before it was Black Lives Matter, we were dealing with some things. I've been real instrumental in that. Me being a preacher brought about me facilitating classes and facilitating students, and now higher level academia with the 1619 project, being on the line and being involved with Nicole Hannah Brown, and those kinds of things have just blew my mind. There was no way for me to know those opportunities will come my way. So I'm very, very, very grateful because once again, I am a witness that if you have the gift, God will make the room.
Now, when you said religion and spiritual, because there is a difference. when it talks about religion, is it just talking about Christianity or various
All
faiths?
religions,
Right.
all religions. Yeah,
Right.
all religions. So I'm not in a position to say, now y'all know ain't nobody gonna, I'm not. Um, but it is good for me because it gives me an opportunity to still once again connect a lot of what I've done in my work experience with where I am now. You have to work with all kinds of people. And so this gives me the chance to do that in class in a way and even learn other religions, other reasons, other beliefs, and because of the rigor of study at the school, this is not a walk in the park. I think I should have done it before I got here. They are quite they're not gonna give you a degree. I promise you that.
See, I like Minister Joyner when you talked about learning different faiths, because even in our faith of Christianity, we are prejudicial. We can be very prejudicial, dogmatic.
Totally.
To the point where like none of them matter. And to say that Jesus died for the world, and when we act a certain way, does that mean portion of the world?
Right.
And so when you talk about religion and it's not spiritual, which means, I guess, you can't come in your classroom with some sort of Sunday school dialogue.
Not at all. Not at all. Not even remotely. Completely leave it at the door. I've got, Islam and many of them believe and Muslims, they believe as fervently as I believe in Jesus Christ and him crucified. They believe in Allah. And learning how to respect without feeling like I need to proselytize.
Yeah, right.
Learning that I can respect your devotion to what I may believe is, and my faith teaches isn't unworthy. It's not worth it. That's not Christianity. It's not. It's a good for me. I came from a Pentecostal background. I came from, Archbishop Roy Brown and Pilgrim. That was my foundation. At that level and brand of Pentecostalism, there is no room for anything else. And my journey just has not taken me that way. And so for me, I've had to learn. I've got, all kinds of faiths, all kinds of beliefs. I just was on a spiritual retreat this weekend with my Presbyterian brothers and sisters, and they had my brother with I think this is a plant, and he was pouring water in the plant and praying to the ancestors and asking us to pray to the ancestors. And you know well and good, I'm not going to pray to nobody's ancestors. However,
well, I acknowledge the ancestors. I don't pray.
I acknowledge them, but I certainly am not going to full-fledged pray to a plant that's representing my ancestors. However, I appreciate the devout attention that they take to what they believe. And so for me, that didn't change the fact that I'm in this workshop and this retreat with most of the people that don't believe what I believe. God always gives me an opportunity to share the faith without being dogmatic.
There's a person that's watching you, Reverend Darlene Morgan Sperling, who is really one of my heroes. And I say it all the time. She's such a tremendous person, a tremendous worker. And she's tuning in tonight, watching you. So I'm thankful to her because for what she has certainly meant to me without knowing it personally. So I want to acknowledge her. Now, describe your early years in life and ministry.
Okay. The short of it is I grew up in the South. Initially, my formative years were in the South with my grandmother. I was born out of wedlock. And back then, my mom was working overnights and needed somebody, had this little baby and couldn't watch me. And so they did what we used to do all the time, sent me to grandmama in Red Clay Dirt, Alabama. And grandmama became mama. And I was there until I got back up to New York. And when I got back up to New York, around about 7-ish or so, we became members of the Pilgrim Church. At the time, it was Pilgrim Baptist Church. And he transitioned to Pilgrim
Yeah.
Assemblies. And there, I knew from ever since I can remember, let's just say I don't remember not knowing I had a call on my life because from a little baby, they just were already saying it. I resisted the conversation, although I did the job. I resisted the conversation because I'm third generation preacher, and I just did not want to be a part of ministry and a call and a cleric because mama and them said so, grandmama and them said so, or because it was a part of what was expected of me. What I believed is as long as I could proclaim, I really did not have to be called a preacher. So I operated with that mindset. Bishop Brown saw my giftings early, got me involved in ministry. He was heavy in Christian education. He was heavy in music ministry. He was heavy in worship and integrating worship with Christian education. We had Sunday schools and retreats, and remember, I don't know if you remember, he had started the school, and so there was a lot of education going on. I had Sunday school teachers like the late, Lois Rochford, Sunday school teachers like the late Iona Locke, Sunday school teachers like Jackie McCullough. These folks would come in and teach us. Those women imparted things in me so young because they saw it, but they acted like big sisters. And for me, that gave me the freedom to grow without the pressure. At home, things were, I grew up in Brooklyn, the projects. Once we moved to Bed-Stuy, we moved to Marlboro Projects, right outside of Stillwell Avenue, one stop from Coney Island. And if you remember, Marlboro at the time was built, and we were the first ones to live in our apartments. It was a long list of, the majority of my neighbors were white. We had the Jews, the Hasidic Jews on one side, the Avenue U and Avenue X side, and on the number side, we had the Italians. And then they put this project in the middle. And the majority of my school life was all folks that were white. That lit the fire of wanting to know, learn, knowledge, because that was the environment I was in. Even though it was like a typical project with all kind of stuff going on in the project, outside of there.
Oh, yeah.
There was all kind of stuff happening.
Well, I know about the projects, no question.
You know the saying, if you grew up in Brooklyn, you can live anywhere in the country. But if you grew up in Brooklyn projects, you can live anywhere in the world. And I carry that wherever I go. People ask me, I can't believe you moved by yourself all the way to Syracuse. I said, I grew up in the Brooklyn project. This is a walk in the park. Because I use that. That grit helped me a lot. So that was a part of my formative years, learning, studying, ministry and music, learning, studying, ministry and music. That was what Archbishop Roy Brown, and because he was like a dad, because he has one daughter, and that one daughter was my best friend, who is still my best friend.
Wow.
And I had the opportunity to be around the man, and not just the bishop, not just the pastor, to get that helped a lot. Then I got married, and got married at 21 because we Pentecostal, and they're not trying to have it.
They're trying to have what?
You know what they're not trying to have. So they got us married. Married a guy. I actually thought he was a member of Pilgrim because he used to come all the time. I had no idea until we actually began to talk and caught that he was a member of the Trinity Baptist Church in the Bronx under the late Nathaniel Tyler Lloyd. Yes. Up there.
Yes.
And so I married at 21.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with my husband because those were the instructions, and became a part. And that is where God planted me in terms of the Baptist faith. And that gave me the experience I needed to benefit from learning. I'm an avid learner. My brain is always soaking up information and trying to apply it in a way. So I got mentored, and all through the years, I've mentored. I now have a mentor, Reverend Dr. Helen Wingate's been mentoring me for years. We went from colleagues when I was a wife, then got divorced. She became like a big sis through that process. And then God transitioned into more of a mentor. She is the one that I rely upon to, make sure that I'm clear about what I'm doing, how I'm getting it done, but also navigate loss and pain, how to handle that in a public setting. She has been that person, and I myself pay it forward. I pay it forward. Like you said, grateful I can be of any assistance to anybody. But when God assigns, like Niger, when he assigns, like some of my other spiritual children, I live for those days because I know that the more I give out, the more God fills me.
You talked about Roy Brown and how effective he was, and there may not be people who know, but he was actually the pastor of the Mount Olive Baptist Church.
Yes, he was.
And by being the pastor of Mount Olive Baptist Church, he was taught. Brown was R.D. Brown mentored Roy Brown, and he took many of the things that he learned on R.D. Brown to certainly to Pilgrim. So that was good. But I do want to say this, is that I never really liked the expression, and I understand why we use it, out of wedlock. Out of wedlock. This is something that look, 99.9% of the people in church, with the exception of you, the 21-year-old Pentecostal, 99.1% of the people that go to church have sex before they get married.
91, yeah.
Now, I said 99.1.
99.1, oh, okay.
Yeah, right, 99.1. So I think that when we say things like out of wedlock, everything God does, even through whatever inclinations or mistakes we made, he shapes it for his will and for the person that is being born.
I agree.
So when your grandmother, who was a blessing, the fact that your mother had you,
right,
in a real sense, to be impactful in ministry right now. So I'm thankful to her.
Yeah, I think I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for those days where I spent with my grandmother, because that red clay dirt grounded me with some principles that I carry to this day, that I not had them when life's real struggles came, it would have taken me out.
Yeah.
I couldn't church my way out of that. It would have taken me out.
It would have taken you out. Okay, now give me, from your point of view, in the years you have been like parent preaching, how do you formulate a sermon for these times? And the reason why I ask you that is because we know that you said that church is different, and so is sermonizing.
Yeah.
Like, I hear sermons as if they're still at a late night service from 10 years ago.
Without a doubt.
So how do you formulate sermon in this time?
Reverend, I will say that for me, I have always, probably because of my background, preached in time. I've always preached because of the grit, because of the ministry, the rolling up the sleeves and being involved in the lives and developing relations that were prophetic and not just authority, relationships that come through people's struggles. I have always been tasked with the job of preaching in time. So this time is no different for me in terms of my style. I have always had to, number one, work and preach. So because of the secular world, it has kept my feet planted in the world, but not of the world.
Yeah.
That also knowing that some of those people needed to hear God. So I had to learn how to write my sermons, outline, much prayer, develop them based upon real time, prepare based upon the text. If I'm not constrained to a theme, I am going to preach what I believe God has prophetically given me to preach with that authority, knowing that authority just doesn't come because God gives you, but it comes also with relationship. So because relationships are important to me, I'm preaching in time. I believe that for me, in time means you roll with what's happening. You don't just preach a, like, I probably could never be a liturgical preacher if it meant that's the only thing I could do. Because for me, it doesn't always line up with what's happening. And my world has never allowed me in ministry to be that far removed from what's happening on the ground. So my sermons are prepared based upon that prophetic anointing and awareness that there is a mother trying to figure out how not to slit a wrist. There's a husband,
Yeah.
in a struggle and can't figure out. There's a man of God, suffering with a secret sin, and there's an issue. All of that happening in church. A child hiding from a molester. Those are the people, the 99.9 that are having sex and feeling bad. I need to be able to preach sermons that will touch them, or the sinner that feels the shame and the prompting of the Holy Ghost to come to Christ. For me, it's all about that when I prepare for sermons, based upon how much time I get, based upon what that, terminology, theme may be as an associate minister, always knowing that I am there as a voice, but I'm not the authority, keeping myself in that realm, unless it's something I'm doing with my own personal ministry. But if I'm coming as a guest, I'm a guest. I can only speak with what God gives me. But I also believe, for me, outlining with authenticity, with the voice and the call he gave me, not trying to be anybody else. Because if he chooses us with what he's given us. And for me, that's how I outline my sermons. That's how I build it.
So you're from Brooklyn, New York, but you don't try to preach like you from Gut Bucket, Mississippi. Is that right?
No, absolutely not.
All right.
Absolutely not. I'm going to be, no matter where I am. I had to present. This is a great example. This Monday, through 2 days ago, I had to make a presentation for the first time with the highest level for our president of our university, and it was an hour meeting, and I needed to have all my ducks in a row. Now there is a whole team behind me making sure it all happens. And we all have met 100,000 times to make sure when this meeting happened that it all flowed, because obviously I'm representing this VP. In that presentation, they know I'm a preacher. That balance keeps me very guided when I have to preach sermons, because I use the same skill, knowing that I am at Reverend Dr. Larry Camp's church, at the Bethlehem Church. It is a privilege for me to be called to do that job. So when I set up sermons and when I set up a topic, it is based around that idea, and that's the framework, not just the academic part of preaching.
Right.
Not just the A and the 3 points, and the entire thing is the part of my experience that I bring with me in my tool chest to do the job.
So you do know that in some cases, not all, New York preachers have a difficult time finding their own voice because they're trying to sound like the guy from Georgia or the woman from South Carolina. I can remember the Reverend Marie Gardner,
Yes.
Reverend Audrey Brunson,
Yes.
And they try to sound like that. And the New York preacher, in some cases, not all, are still seeking their voice because they're trying to sound like someplace where they're not.
And it usually doesn't do well.
Yeah,
And it's even more difficult, I would say, for women.
Is that right?
Certainly.
Wow.
Still have preachers that don't, they're not, there are not a lot of, and I say this to you privately all the time, there are not a lot of pastors that give women, and definitely not women preachers, the opportunity to do what you allow women to do in ministry, in the pulpit of which you lead. Many pastors are still closet, don't believe it, or still not ready to accept it. So they're okay with, I've spoken to you on more than one occasion about when a woman many times goes and says they've been called to preach. The first thing they're told is, well, go to seminary. And they don't look at, this is a woman with 2 kids and she may be a single mom, and you're literally telling her, go get in major debt. And the only opportunity she's going to have when she finishes with that education is to teach Sunday school.
But see, that's what I admire about you, and I know I want to get to the other part. That's what I admire about you and Darlene Morgan Spurling. You raised your children. Darlene Morgan Spurling raised a nice daughter, and she is in ministry. But she also has shown, as you have demonstrated, great strategic business skills. What I appreciate that, and I think that to some degree, women are kept in a certain place still, and which, quite frankly, is the offspring of slavery. But it's just a black man doing it now. All right, let me ask you this. Now, you talked about Dr. Wingate influencing you. What others have influenced you? What others that you know that have played a very vital part in your life?
I would say I told you about my grandmother. She played a great part, although I lost her in my early 20s. She played a great part because she was balancing no education.
Wow.
She was extremely popular in her city because she was relationship oriented. And those relationships were very important to her, white and black. My grandmother took me with her to clean the white folks' house and to iron and to cook. And then they would call upon her for her basket of potions like oil and stuff that she would come in because the literal master's wife in these plantations was sick with something that they couldn't figure out. And they would call Mother Viney. I was a little girl carrying her bags, watching her pray. They think she doing something, she praying, but they believed in her gifts. That took me far. That has taken me far. Another person that I love is Nina Simone.
Oh yeah.
I love Nina Simone because of her music, but also because of her pain.
Which song? Which song? I bet I'm one of the best. The best song you like is which one? You can say the word here.
No, I can't, brother. But I'll let you say it, and I'll say yes.
The song is a bookend to Billie Holiday's "Strange Fruit."
Yeah.
She did a song called Nina Simone, "Mississippi Goddamn," which is reflecting of the oppression that took place.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you agree with that?
I agree with that.
Even though you didn't say the word, right?
I didn't say it, but I'll be a guest. I'm the guest, brother. I'm the guest. I'm the guest. But yes, that definitely impacted me young because it was two things. Number one, it was the allegory. It was the ability to tell the story without literally saying what she meant. I thought that was just very, very strategic. It was unique. And I didn't know then that it was going to be timeless. But the other thing I liked about Nina Simone was the expression of her pain through her gift.
Yeah.
While I think she succumbed to it because for me, she didn't have Christ, I have been able to preach sermons from places of deep anguish. And many times, those have been the most monumental moments for me as a preacher without it seeming like I'm just telling a testimony. So I got those kinds of skills from somebody like her. Jackie McCullough was very influential because there was nobody doing it like her. When I grew up, she was just her and Iona Locke preached with authority I had never seen a woman preach with, and I watched that authority. And for me, I'm result oriented. That's the business part of me. I'm result oriented. I'm not just about the moment. I'm about what the moment represents. And for me, it's always been about that. Even with my children and raising, I've always told them that no matter what you do, your authenticity comes from the inside out, and that there was nothing outside of you that was greater than something in you. So when I watch these people, listen to the music as I got older, because growing up, we couldn't listen to it. But as I got growner, as my grandmother used to say, I was able to watch and hear, and then, documentaries and things like that, that made it really, really special to me. Another one, a sports person, was Wilma Rudolph.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I thought she was amazing and so ahead of her time. So ahead of her. Those kinds of, I've never just been relegated. Now, I have some biblical heroes that make my whole life. Because I see a lot of their struggle now, still to this day. But I'm the glasses half full girl. So I believe that you can get what you need if you look at it with the proper perspective. And I try to offer that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, my guest, Minister Lynnessa Joyner, is our guest tonight, and you'll see the Cash App as it flashes across the screen. Please be a blessing to her. She is a tremendous person, and I got about maybe two more questions to ask you, just two more, and then we're going to go on. By the way, I've enjoyed you for this whole journey. Now, with Black History Month, now I got to think about Black History Month. When my wife and I came up as children in Brooklyn, it was Black History Day, one day.
It's 9 o'clock.
We made it a month, but Black people, in my opinion, some Black people, in my opinion, are only Black 30 days out of the year.
28.
No, I'm gonna say 30. I'm gonna tell you the reason why. Emancipation, Martin Luther King, and 27 days.
You're right.
February, right?
Right.
Every time your watch goes off, whether it's on your wrist, what's behind the wrist is your Black skin.
This is true.
So if you have to be Black at a certain element of time, when history shows that many of our people were oppressed in different months of different years.
Right.
So February becomes Black History Month. So I just want you, what historical figures do you reflect on? You talked about Wilma Rudolph.
Yeah.
With others, and they can be present as well.
Well, I obviously like Michelle Obama. I like her though for her standing by her man feel that she has managed to give in some way without there being, she's so graceful with it that you don't almost always realize that this is the woman that used to be Obama's boss. They met when she was the boss.
Yeah, yeah.
And the ability to make that kind of adjustment to her own career, that balance for a Black woman is not, I have not seen that done very well. So I like her for that reason. I like her for that. I mean, she's obviously extremely smart, but I like her because she's been able to manage that. Now, I'm not talking about her spiritual life. That's not what I'm discussing. I am
I
discussing about
understand.
her ability to manage her relationship with this black man of, biracial birth in a country that does not like black men and doesn't like black women. And so this is an incredible feat to me. Um, and I think it's an example. I'm pro family. I'm pro wives and husbands. I'm gonna be that till I die. I believe that our strength lies a lot of times in our families, no matter how difficult it is, it lies there. So she's somebody I admire. I admired for years Sojourner Truth. I didn't know a lot about it. It was more for a while, it was more Hollywood feel to it.
I understand. Yes.
It took some time for me to dig in and to realize I admire her for her simultaneous thrust for freedom, but through pain. And I obviously assimilate my life to women who have experienced their life, and there was always this backdrop of pain going on. Because that has been a lot of mine. And a lot of those that I mentor and a lot of those that I minister to, that we as people of the cloth can be going through all kinds of things, but still having to find a place to draw from. Those women I admire. Maya Angelou, that kind of woman who could turn the life she had around. Toni Morrison, fully grown and start a whole new career. And my last one is Stacey Abrams.
Oh
She
yeah.
is
Good.
fast becoming somebody I enjoy. She's she has got all of the makings of somebody that I could say to a young woman, you want to be like that in terms of her career track when you grow up. She took a hit, but she turned it into a victory. I will always respect her for that.
And all of those that you have named, it should also be clear for those who are watching that a lot of our heroes are not necessarily Christian. They're not Christian. And that's okay.
Totally.
That is okay because, we talked about people over the course of the years. We talked about, there was a woman by the name of Shotgun Mary who used to deliver mail, and she was in high by the post office. She carried a gun with her. Yeah. You talk about Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth was 6'2" tall. Harriet Tubman. And I think that, but Butterfly McQueen is my hero, and I'm gonna tell you why. Butterfly McQueen played in the movie Gone with the Wind, and she only had one iconic line in there that I remember. Miss Scarlett, I don't know nothing about birthing no babies. And she said, if there is any religion that has where they bomb people's churches and bomb their homes and hang them on a tree, I don't want to have anything to do with that faith. And I think and she was atheist. Mm-hmm. So I still think that she is a hero to be able to say something like that in 1941.
Sure.
Now, what books have you read and would you recommend to this audience?
I knew you were going to ask me that. And I said, this is going to be the hardest question because I'm in school. I'm only reading books that have to do with school.
All right. That's
my brain right now. I can't even afford the opportunity to enjoy some of the things that I was doing before. Literally, not because I'm stuck in books. I'm stuck in academia. And it's just one of those things where the minute I open up my Kindle to read something else, let me tell you who else I like. I liked Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
I like Hillary Clinton, again, for her relationship with a public life and making decisions that were not popular, but choosing to stay with Bill. I have mad respect. I was a wife for almost 20 years. I know it takes a lot.
Well, there you Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi are bookends to me.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they get the same expression on their faces, boy.
Two of them. They've been through a lot, and that ability to just, I mean, they're in their 80s, and we know Nancy started and she's got 5 kids. She's still with the same husband. This is unbelievable.
Like that's the problem.
I mean, all I can tell you is they carry thick sticks, and they still going at it, at this age. And I think it's passionately and with vigor that I pray to goodness I can have a voice that long.
Your mentor, Helen Wingate, is on here. But now let's do this. Again, we're going to show the Cash App for Minister Lynnessa Joyner. Then we're going to show our pictures of our guests who will be coming in the next week. Now, Minister Joyner did a tremendous job, and I'm thankful to her for certainly being on here. And next Wednesday will be the Reverend Jeffrey Thompson, the senior pastor of the Amity Baptist Church in Jamaica, Queens. And the Wednesday after Jeffrey Thompson will be Minister Lyonnell Boone, because this young brother here, a lot of cats brag about what they do in media. This guy don't, he just does. This guy don't, but he does. This guy has done for T.D. Jakes. He has done for Creflo Dollar. He has done for, what's the white cat's name? The preacher. Joel Osteen, Lyonnell Boone. That's an interview you don't want to miss. And then following Lyonnell Boone, we will have our son in the ministry, the Reverend Timothy Peter Taylor, the senior pastor of the Hebron Baptist Church in Brooklyn. And so look out for all of them. Mr. Joyner, any closing words or words of encouragement you want to give to this audience at this time?
I'd just like to say quickly that in whatever you do, whether it be in ministry or in your secular life, be authentic, be prayerful, and do it with love.
Thank you so much, sis.
Thank you.
You mean a lot to me. Minister Lynnessa Joyner, brothers and sisters, keep your eye out for her. And certainly for those of you who wish to know something more about administration and education, contact her, but I will not give you her number unless she makes that plain to me as well. So.
Yeah, at any time. Thank you. Thank
you. Close us out in prayer, Minister Joyner. Just a word of prayer, if you please.
Dear God, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for what you've done. Lord, let everything that has been done tonight be to your glory. And we thank you for this pastor who has had this vision to draw insight, to go to the well and say, what can we pull from it? God, we thank you. And we ask that you increase his camp, you increase his tribe, you increase his nation. We thank you. Cover him and his family, his congregation, and his community as he continues to do the work of the Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I love you.
Love you too, sis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.